Good evening and a warm welcome from the Ideas Network 2030. It's a pleasure to host another of our webinars, this time on geopolitics, as we frequently do early in the year, to have a look at what is going on and see where European and British positions are on those matters. Tonight we have with us David McAllister. David McAllister is the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the European Parliament. He was also previously a Prime Minister of Lower Saxony, and he is above all a very good friend of the Ideas Network. Thank you, David, for being with us, not tonight, but already, I think it's your third webinar we are doing. Yeah. So long-standing friend. Thank you so much. And then we have James Rogers. He's the co-founder and director at the Council on Geostrategy, one of Britain's leading new think tanks in the geopolitical strategy field. He also held positions at the Baltic Defense College and other positions. And this is our first joint event with the Council on Geostrategy, and we hope you enjoy this experience and that we have many others to follow. The topics are definitely there to discuss. Before we start, and I'll hand over the floor to David, let me say a few words on housekeeping. This session is being recorded. We will have David first speaking, and then James will make a few comments on David's remarks. This event will then be summarized and will also be available, the summary, on our website. And I wish us all a very interesting evening. I think the topics do not need any further introductions. The news is all about them at the moment. And by this, I hand over the floor to David, please.
Kind regards from Brussels, here in the European Parliament. It's 5 o'clock continental European time. The sun is just about to go down, and I'm happy to share a few thoughts on the EU and UK perspectives to 2030. As Felix just mentioned, I have the honor of chairing the Foreign Affairs Committee of the European Parliament. We are the committee responsible for scrutinizing the work of a number of commissioners, including the new Vice President and High Representative Kaja Kallas, but also the commissioners for enlargement, Marta Kors, and Dubravka Šuica, who's the commissioner for the Mediterranean. Just yesterday evening, we had a meeting with all the commissioners coming from our political family, the European People's Party, and we were more or less discussing very similar topics. Where do we stand in 2025, and what can we expect in this decade, in the next 5 years? And it's obvious that we stand at a pivotal moment of profound geopolitical changes. The post-Cold War world of the late 20th century, which I experienced when I was serving in the German military, it has given way to a fragmented and contested landscape, one where old certainties are no longer hold. Autocracies are rising, alliances are being tested, and the rules-based international order faces its greatest challenge in decades. That's why I very much welcome that the heads of state and government of the European Union met on Monday, not far away from here in Brussels, in Palais Egmont, to discuss the important issues of security and defense, because we need the leaders of our member states to really agree on what we actually want to do. And I also very much welcome that the UK Prime Minister was invited for dinner, because whatever we're planning to do in Europe to strengthen our own security and defense, we should always include the United Kingdom, because despite Brexit, Britain is not only our neighbour, an important trading partner, but also a very important political partner and rock solid NATO ally. And the UK, just like the EU27, stand firmly with our shared commitment to democracy, the rule of law and human rights, and our close cooperation since the beginning of the fully fledged war of aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine have shown what potential there is. Of course, talk of the town here in Brussels, just like London, I would presume, is how are we going to continue with transatlantic relations? We know from the first term of Mr. Trump in office in Washington that he doesn't have such high opinion of the European Union. He prefers to deal with individual member states, and he certainly has an obsession with tariffs, which he once described as his most favorite word. And he also obviously has an obsession with cars built in Germany, Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes, because he always mentions that there are too many German cars in America and not enough American cars driving on roads in Europe, including Germany. We are very keen to have the closest possible relations with the United States. The United States are our most important trading partner. The United States is our security guarantee. And we very much know in Europe how much we owe the Americans for providing this security, and that means our freedom and liberty over all these decades. Some moves from the new US administration, for instance, an outspoken interest in the future of Greenland, raise some serious concerns here in Europe. Denmark is a fully fledged EU member and NATO ally. And even though Greenland is not part of the EU, it is part of the Kingdom of Denmark. And we do hope that the US, who have always been the guardian of the international rules-based order, should avoid creating any kind of different perception. It is essential to avoid the impression that might makes right. History teaches us the dangers of such thinking. It reminds us why the international community came together after 1945 to establish institutions and norms that prioritize fairness and mutual respect over brute force. It is our responsibility to ensure that these values prevail. So we are waiting what will happen in Washington. We are hoping for the best, but we are prepared for any other outcome. Nonetheless, I think it's important in this situation now that the European Union and the United Kingdom move their partnership forward. Since I'm addressing a British audience tonight, I just want to again convey our message that we are very much interested in moving things forward with the United Kingdom. There's a lot of talk in London about a reset of our relations. We would perhaps say that we want to build upon the existing agreements, which of course both need to be fully fulfilled. But we have always said that while we will not renegotiate mutually agreed treaties, we are of course ready to add political cooperation to the trade and cooperation agreement, and especially defense and security is low-hanging fruit here. Now, I want to make three brief remarks. The first one is on Ukraine. The EU27 is very clearly committed to continuing our support for Ukraine. The 24th of February of 2022 marked a turning point in modern history, because this is not just, quote unquote, a Russian invasion of Ukraine, but this is a fundamental attack on the European peace and security order. It is a brutal assault on the entire rules-based international order, and the outcome of this war will have a massive impact on the way we want to live in this world. That's why we have supported Ukraine together with our friends in the United Kingdom and others, like we have never supported a third country before. And we will continue to support Ukraine. Our support remains steadfast. It is complementary, and it will remain carefully coordinated, aiming at a just and lasting peace. You can have peace tomorrow in Ukraine. It's not about a peace, it's about a sustainable peace with security guarantees for the brave Ukrainian people. So we are ready to support Ukraine as long as it takes and whatever it takes until the Russian Federation, until President Putin realizes that he cannot fulfill his aims with military means. I would like to thank the British side for the great partnership and the excellent cooperation we've had. On the EU side, this war is more than a test of our external policies. It is also a call to advance European integration. One of the least recognized effects of this war is that there is a new momentum to EU enlargement, with a revived consensus on the swift and gradual integration of the Western Balkan countries into our family of nations, and in addition, Ukraine and Moldova are now candidate countries. This is not just a political statement, but a strategic imperative. The UK and the EU both should have an interest in the greater stability and security of a region which enlargement could bring. I had a conversation this afternoon with the new Foreign Minister of Montenegro. Montenegro is the front runner in the EU enlargement process, and he hopes to conclude the negotiations at a technical level in 2026. And he told me today that his plan is to be number 28. We will see if this happens. EU accession will always be a merit-based process. Every country needs to be judged individually, but once a country is ready, we should bring them on board, and that's why we will continue to support the Western Balkan countries, Moldova, Ukraine. Unfortunately, the situation in Georgia is, in the moment, very difficult with the ruling party going along the totally wrong track. The second point I wanted to make is the Middle East. Here, just to state the obvious, coordinated strategic engagement is crucial to contribute to the stabilization in the Middle East. We welcome as European Union the recent ceasefire in Gaza and the phased release of hostages. This is hopefully a significant step in reducing the immense suffering endured by civilians on both sides over the past months. This path forward needs to include diplomatic efforts to address the root causes of this conflict. Because President Trump made an announcement today, I declare for the European Parliament that the European Union remains steadfast in its support for a negotiated two-state solution based on the 1967 borders, with Jerusalem as a shared capital. We do not agree with these new ideas coming from the White House. I want to mention Iran's role in the region. It adds another layer of complexity. We are very clear here that through its proxies, Iran has fueled violence, supplied weapons to Russia for use in Ukraine, and also directly attacked Israel, and that we have to be very cautious in dealing with the regime of the mullahs in Tehran. The European Parliament has repeatedly called for the European Union to take a tougher stance on the regime in Tehran. One positive sign is certainly the election of a new president in Lebanon on the 9th of January. This is a sign of Hezbollah's and Iran's diminished grip on the country. But of course, it is vital that the entire region comes to peace again, that the ceasefire is extended, that the ceasefire is implemented. We also welcome the recent fall of the Assad regime. This has opened a new chapter in Syrian history, one fraught with both peril and potential. The European Union, just like the UK, should urgently step up humanitarian aid and protection for the almost 17 million people in need in Syria. And a final point on the Indo-Pacific. Here, I just want to say that we in the European Union follow a multidimensional approach dealing with China, perhaps using a term mainly coined by Radek Sikorski, the Polish foreign minister, a good friend, who said, with China, it's about cooperating where possible, competing where necessary, and confronting where required, which mirrors, I guess, the British strategy towards the country compete, cooperate, and challenge. We understand fully how important China is as a trading partner. We know that we need China as a political partner when it comes to tackling global challenges like climate. But on the other hand, we are fully aware that China aims to redefine the economic, diplomatic, technological, and military global order. And we are, of course, very aware who are actually the three countries who are supporting Russia in its war of aggression against Ukraine. These are China, Iran, and North Korea. What we will be doing as European Union is to strengthen our alliances with key regional players in the Indo-Pacific, including Japan, Australia, New Zealand, India, South Korea, and ASEAN. One of our member states has its own territories in the Indo-Pacific, France, and we know that, of course, also a close cooperation with the UK is vital in this part of the world. So to conclude, I just want to say that the European Parliament still regrets that a formal framework for cooperation, foreign and security policy has not been included in the EU-UK Trade and Cooperation Agreement. I hope that the living nature of the TCA would allow us to have a more stable framework of cooperation in these areas in the future. I heard yesterday that obviously a date for the first EU-UK summit has now been announced. If I remember correctly, it will be in mid-May. And then we will see how we can move things forward to a more regular formal cooperation. One thing is clear, the EU and the UK can advance shared interest, bolster European security, and better prepare for future challenges. And while the main topics of this term in Europe are competitiveness and a closer cooperation on security and defense, whatever we do in Europe, we should always treat the United Kingdom as if they were a member of the European Union. I cannot imagine how we can seriously move forward on closer cooperation in European defense industry without including the UK, with all the excellent equipment and all the excellent goods coming from your industry in this field. So it was great to have the Prime Minister in Brussels on Monday, and now we're looking forward to the first EU-UK summit since Brexit, which will take place in May 2025. I'll keep it there. Thank you very much, Felix and James.
Thank you very much, David. There was, of course, a lot to unpack, and I'm very glad you ended on such a positive note in terms of where European, EU, UK cooperation might actually become more constructive in its engagement again.